Hello everyone. Tonight we step softly into the deep jungle shadows of the ancient world, where the air hums with insects, the trees lean in like they're eavesdropping, and something strange is always watching. You've made it to the right place, but fair warning, you probably won't survive this. Not if you're squeamish, not if you think history is all clean columns and noble kings. No, the Maya didn't care about your comfort zone. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I am doing here. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's take a gentle walk tonight. We begin not with a temple or a war, but with a bedroom, or what passed for one in the Maya world. Imagine a simple thatched roof house, made of limestone and mud packed with warmth and bodies. It's late. The night is thick with frogs croaking and the scent of burning copal incense, and in the corner of the room, tucked in like an honored guest, is a skull. Not just any skull, your grandmother's, your father's, maybe both. To the Maya, death wasn't an ending, it was an address change. Ancestors stayed close, literally. People slept with skulls in their homes as a way of maintaining spiritual connection. Sometimes the skulls were placed in niches by the door. Other times, they were tucked under sleeping mats. And occasionally, folks even whispered to them before bedtime, the way you might talk to a photo in a locket. You might think this sounds creepy, and you'd be right. Especially if your current roommate freaks out when you leave dishes in the sink, imagine explaining the bone shelf. But to the Maya, this was comfort. Skull of grandma? That's just the house guardian now. In fact, it was a sign of devotion and a way to keep ancestral wisdom close. Still, historians can't quite agree. Were these skulls spiritual protection, or did they serve some political or ritual purpose? Or maybe they just didn't have storage units yet. In Tikal, one of the greatest Maya cities, we see evidence of this skull-based connection. As the city grew from a humble ceremonial center into a sprawling city-state around 100 AD, elites began building shrines inside their homes, little altars where bones and relics of relatives were kept and honored. It wasn't about hiding the dead, it was about keeping them present, part of everyday life. What's wild is how normal this all was. A Maya child might have grown up seeing grandma's skull smiling from a shelf, decorated with jade or painted red with cinnabar. To them this wasn't horror, it was memory made visible, maybe even love in bone form. And before you think this was a fringe practice, know this. Some rulers even had ancestor skulls enshrined in temples. They became sacred links to legitimacy. I rule this city because my great-great-granddad, Cranium, says so. You've heard of keeping receipts. The Maya kept heads. Meanwhile, out in the dense forests, where the howler monkeys scream like demons and fireflies pulse like tiny stars, other Maya families mirrored this ancestor devotion. Not with tombs, but with rituals. When someone died, they might be buried beneath the home, yes, right under the floor. Later, on feast days, family members would stomp around and pour chocolate drinks into the earth to feed the dead. Again, this sounds bizarre until you remember we do the same, just cleaner. Ever left a flower on a grave? Whispered something to a photo? The Maya just took it further, and there's something strangely peaceful in the idea that you're never really alone, even in the dark, that those who came before you are watching, not in a spooky ghost story way, but in a gentle guardian way, unless, of course, you forget to offer chocolate. A strange, sweet detail. Some skulls were polished smooth from years of being held, handled, kissed. The Maya weren't afraid of death. They touched it, cleaned it, kept it close, like a memory that won't fade. You can almost feel the stone coolness of it under your fingertips now, can't you? The jungle doesn't forget, and neither did the Maya. And here's something to think about. In the modern world, we bury and forget. We sanitize grief. The Maya? They invited it to dinner, literally. Scholars still debate the exact meanings behind these ancestral practices. Some argue it was purely ritualistic, a link between living and divine. Others think it was more practical, like an ancient security system, protect the home with the power of the dead. Either way, it tells us one thing. For the Maya, family didn't end with death. It just changed addresses. So tonight, as you curl up under your blanket and let the soft sounds of the jungle settle into your ears. Picture it. Just over there in the corner of your dream, a candle flickers next to a skull. And someone's whispering a prayer you don't quite understand. The jungle doesn't sleep, not really. It shifts, it breathes. And just before the sun lifts its amber fingers over the horizon, something else stirs among the leaves. A whisper of flint, the scratch of bark, and the soft drip of blood. Because for the Maya, the day didn't start with breakfast. It started with blood. Let's say you're a high priest, a king, or maybe just someone high-ranking enough to wear a jade necklace and feel important. The sun rises. You kneel before the altar, and instead of brushing your teeth, you pierce your tongue, or your earlobe, or if you're particularly devout, your, sacred lower bits. Yes, that's how the elite Maya greeted the gods. Not with a wave, but with a bloodletting ceremony so intimate, so raw, it makes morning jogs look lazy. They'd use stingray spines, obsidian blades, or sharpened bone needles to pierce the flesh and collect blood on bark paper. Then, this is the real party trick, they'd burn the bloody paper, sending the smoke skyward to feed the gods. Now don't panic. Regular folks weren't doing this every day, but among the nobility, this was a spiritual espresso shot, a way to open communication lines with the divine. Think of it like texting the gods, but with, more blood and fewer emojis. And before you squirm too much, remember, they didn't see pain the way we do. Pain wasn't punishment, it was sacrifice, a powerful offering. To them, bleeding was like offering part of your soul in exchange for guidance, visions, or cosmic favor. There's an official event that ties it all together. The dedication of the Temple of the Inscriptions in Palanque, around 675 AD, commissioned by the legendary ruler Keinich Janab Pakal. The temple wasn't just a tomb, it was a stage. Carvings show kings and queens performing ritual bloodletting before massive crowds. Talk about pressure. Imagine standing on a pyramid, slicing your tongue in front of your entire city, hoping the gods and your ancestors are impressed. But what's even stranger is that this wasn't just a solo act. Sometimes royal couples would bleed together. Yes, ritual couples piercing was a thing. Modern date nights feel a little tame in comparison. And guess what? There were even bloodletting kits passed down like family heirlooms. Imagine your grandmother's stingray spine tucked in a velvet pouch. Oh. The pain, the smoke, the sacrifice, it all fed into one central belief, that the gods had given their blood to create the world, and now the Maya must return the favor. Life for life. Drop for drop. Even the temples themselves were stained with it. Archaeologists found layers of burned, blood-soaked bark beneath altars. These weren't isolated events. They were performances of cosmic responsibility. Still, scholars can't quite agree. Were these acts solely religious, or also political theater? Were kings proving their piety, or just their toughness? Was it devotion or domination? The truth, like the smoke from their rituals, still curls just out of reach. And while we're talking strange, get this. Some ceremonies included hallucinations brought on by blood loss. That's right. The Maya believed their visions weren't just dreams, but messages from the spirit world. Imagine a spiritual FaceTime, but you have to faint to connect. Now here comes your second joke of the night. No pain, no gain may have started as a Maya proverb. So what did they see in those visions? Gods with jaguar faces, ancestors walking backward, serpents swallowing stars. The veil between worlds didn't just thin, it tore open. In those moments, kings weren't men anymore. They were divine messengers speaking with the heavens and offering their own bodies as proof. And all of this, yes, all this blood and burning was before breakfast. To modern minds it seems excessive, dramatic, maybe even horrifying. But for the Maya this was normal. It was duty. It was the rhythm of the sacred. You couldn't buy your way into favor with the gods. You had to bleed for it. Yet even here in all this ritual pain you see something surprisingly human. Love. Connection. An offering of self. A desire to reach something bigger, something eternal. Not so different, really, from writing poetry, singing hymns, or staring at the stars, wondering if someone's listening. Still, be honest. Your morning routine suddenly feels a lot more chill now, right? You wake up, stretch, maybe scroll your phone. Meanwhile, your Maya counterpart is lighting bark on fire with their own plasma. One last strange detail? They sometimes captured enemy kings just to make them bleed publicly. It was the ultimate humiliation, taking someone powerful, making them pierce themselves, and showing the gods you were now the chosen one. So next time someone complains about getting up early for work, just lean in and whisper, "At least you don't have to slice your tongue open to check your emails." Historians still debate whether bloodletting was always voluntary or whether it eventually became too ceremonial, too performative, like an ancient religious influencer culture. But what we know for sure is this: blood wasn't scary, it was sacred. The sun is rising over the temple tops now. The smoke curls away. The gods have had their breakfast. The sun is climbing higher now, burning off the jungle mist, and somewhere behind the trees, you hear the steady, rhythmic pounding of rubber against stone. Not drums, not footsteps, a ball. A heavy, smacking, echoing thud of a ball being slammed through the air. Welcome to the Maya ball game, known to them as Pokta Pok, where honor is everything, the rules are vague, and sometimes the loser dies. Or the winner. Honestly, we're still not totally sure, and that's part of the thrill, isn't it? So imagine this: two teams, each wearing padded armor made of leather and animal hide, step into a giant stone court, some of them barefoot, all of them serious. They're not just athletes, they're warriors, priests, maybe future sacrifices, and they've been trained for this since childhood. The ball they're using? Solid rubber, about the size of a grapefruit, but weighing as much as a small bowling ball. And no, you can't use your hands or feet. You have to hit it with your hips, elbows, or knees. Cue the third joke of the night. It's like soccer, and dodgeball had a baby, and then made it deadly. At Chichen Itza, the most famous Maya site, you can still stand in the great ball court. It's longer than a football field, with steep stone walls on either side, and stone rings mounted high above. If a player managed to hit the ball through one of those rings, it wasn't just a score, it was a miracle, a myth. It almost never happened, and that might have been the point. Scoring wasn't really the goal, surviving was. Some games were just sport, others were deadly ritual. And during the height of the Maya classic period, around the 7th to 9th centuries AD, the ball game took on an even deeper meaning. It wasn't just about winning, it was about balancing the universe. To the Maya, life was duality, day and night, death and rebirth, blood and rain. The ball game symbolized that cosmic tug of war, two sides battling not just for victory, but for spiritual balance. And when it was time to tip that balance in favor of the gods, somebody had to pay the price. There's evidence, murals, glyphs, carvings, that the losing team, or at least the captain, might be sacrificed. Their heads sometimes appear depicted next to blossoming maize, symbolizing rebirth. To die in the game wasn't punishment, it was a gift to the gods. Still, some scholars argue the winners were sacrificed instead, as the ultimate honor. Think about that. Play the best game of your life, and get your heart cut out. Suddenly, second place doesn't sound so bad. Historians still debate whether these sacrifice games happened all the time, or only on special occasions, maybe for coronations, holy festivals, or astronomical events. Some say it was rare, others say it was central to Maya life. No one agrees entirely. But one thing is certain, the ball game mattered, deeply. It was played in every Maya city, from Copan to Uxmal, Tikal to Calakmul. Courts were placed in sacred areas, near temples and tombs. This wasn't a back-alley pastime, it was cosmic theater. And the strangest part? People watched this knowing someone might die. They brought their families, ate roasted corn, cheered. It was entertainment, religion, and social order, all in one sweaty, echoing collision of rubber and flesh. You can still feel it if you visit. Step into that overgrown ball court and the air tightens. No birds sing, the walls lean in, and for a moment you hear it, that single echoing thunk, a ball bouncing through centuries of silence. Here's a bizarre detail. Some balls were said to contain human skulls inside them, wrapped in rubber. A chilling mix of sport and sacrifice. Just another way to remind everyone, you're not just playing with fate, You're literally holding death in your hands or hips. So now imagine playing. You're sweating, bruised, the crowd is chanting. You're 1 point away from victory or sacrifice. Your fate, your family's fate, maybe your city's fate, hinges on your next move. And there's no referee, only gods watching from above. Talk about pressure, the game ends. A winner is named. And somewhere just beyond the court, priests prepare the altar. Now this wasn't always about death. In some cities, the ball game was more ceremonial than fatal. It was a chance to show skill, settle disputes, or crown a new ruler. In fact, some kings claim to have defeated enemies on the court as a form of symbolic conquest, like saying, "I didn't need to fight a war, I beat them fair and square in the sacred game." But whether or not blood was spilled every time, the Maya believed this game kept the universe turning. The sound of the ball striking stone, that was the sound of creation echoing forward. Lose that rhythm and who knows, maybe the sun wouldn't rise tomorrow. You've made it this far, you've survived skull beds and blood breakfasts, and now you've walked the court of the gods. But the night is still young and the jungle's secrets have barely begun to stir. The jungle glistens in the heat now, leaves dripping, cicadas buzzing like electric wires, and the stone temples glowing in the sun. But something else catches your eye. Something unexpected. A smile, a flash of green light, not from jewelry or cloth, but from someone's teeth. Because in the Maya world, a brilliant grin wasn't just about hygiene, it was about status, style, power, and nothing said, "I've made it," like jade in your molars. That's right. The Maya decorated their teeth, not with braces or grills, but by drilling tiny holes into their incisors and fitting them with gemstones. Jade, obsidian, turquoise, even pyrite if you were feeling fancy. These weren't shallow surface glues either. The Maya had a technique that allowed the stones to stay in place, probably using plant-based adhesives so good they'd make modern dentists weep with envy. And they didn't stop there. They also filed their teeth into shapes, sharp points, rounded cones, sometimes even little geometric carvings. Nothing says royalty like turning your mouth into a razor blade. You can almost hear it now. Smile for the gods. And then, ouch. Here is your first joke for this section. Forget veneers. These people were inventing fashion braces before toothpaste even existed. But let's back up. Why go through all that pain? To the Maya, beauty was divine. Their gods had sparkling features, elongated skulls, and supernatural traits, so the Maya tried to imitate them. A smile wasn't just for flirting, it was a spiritual signal. A badge of nobility. If you could endure the pain of drilling and filing, you showed the world you weren't just physically strong, you were spiritually refined. There's a historical moment that captures this, the burial of King Pakal the Great at Palenque. When archaeologists uncovered his tomb in the 1950s, they found his face covered with a jade death mask. But the real surprise came when they examined other elite skeletons nearby. Dozens had gemstone-studded teeth. That's not an accident. That's a dental dynasty. And unlike today, this wasn't something only the very rich could do. Middle-class Maya might file their teeth or stain them black using plant dye. Yes, black teeth were considered attractive, especially for women, like Gothic lipstick, but permanent. Now here's a fun visual. Imagine two Maya nobles arguing at court, both of them flashing pointy, glittering smiles like angry, bejeweled wolves. Fabulous, terrifying, unforgettable. Still, scholars debate the purpose of this cosmetic dental work. Was it always about beauty? Or did some designs mark tribe, clan, or religious affiliation? Maybe it was like wearing your family crest inside your mouth. Or, hear me out, maybe some people just liked the sparkle. Another strange detail, there's no sign that they used anesthesia. That's right, these people were drilling into live teeth with stone tools, and they just dealt with it. One scholar suggested they might have used numbing herbs, but honestly, that feels optimistic. Imagine sitting there, mouth open, as a shaman dentist hovers over you with a flint-tipped hand drill, chanting prayers and preparing the jade insert. There's no rinse and spit, no magazines in the waiting room, just you, the pain, and the gods. Second joke of the section, your dentist may give you a sticker, But Maya dentists gave you trauma and sparkle. But here is what really sets this apart. They didn't see pain as a problem. They saw it as part of the transformation. The blood, the heat, the tears. It all meant you were crossing into something higher, a better self, a more sacred self. This kind of bodily transformation wasn't limited to teeth either. The Maya were masters of intentional body modification. Elongated skulls, pierced ears and noses, tattoos carved into the skin. They were living sculptures, shaped by tradition and cosmic belief. The teeth just happened to be front and center. There's a certain poetry in that, isn't there? That even your smile could be a form of prayer. Yet modern scholars still puzzle over how widespread these practices were. Were they regional fads, signs of elite schooling? Was each tooth decoration tied to specific deities or rituals? No one knows for sure. But when you see a jade-inlaid Maya skull staring back at you from a museum case, you feel it in your bones. This was someone who mattered, who suffered for beauty, who spoke to gods through gleaming green stones. And one last wild fact. Some skulls have up to 6 gemstones in their teeth. That's not cosmetic, it's commitment. Can you imagine biting into a mango with that kind of bling? Final joke of the section. Flossing must have been a nightmare, but at least you could blind your enemies with one good grin. So tonight, as you settle in and maybe flash a sleepy smile to no one in particular, think of the Maya, turning teeth into altars, beauty into bravery, and pain into something that shimmered under the jungle sun. The jungle has quieted now, just a few birds calling out to each other like old friends, and the rustling of palm leaves in the breeze. It's almost peaceful, almost, until you realize the Maya weren't just masters of stone, blood, and bone. They were also time travelers. Well, sort of. Because long before Europe figured out how many days were in a year before the leap year was even a twinkle in Julius Caesar's eye, the Maya had already crafted a calendar system so complex, so precise, it makes your smartphone look lazy. Imagine knowing the exact day a solar eclipse will occur, hundreds of years into the future. The Maya did that, over and over, with eerie accuracy. Their system combined 3 overlapping calendars, the Tzolk'in, a 260-day sacred calendar, the Hab, a 365-day solar calendar, and the long count, which tracked vast cosmic cycles literally from the beginning of time as they saw it. Sounds like overkill? Maybe. Or maybe they were just that good at math, and maybe your planner with the dog photos isn't cutting it. Here's the first joke of this section. The Maya didn't just plan weddings, they planned millennia. The Tzolk'in, with its 260-day cycle, was deeply spiritual. Every day had a name, a number, and a personality. People were born into it, named by it, guided by it. You weren't just a Tuesday baby, you were born on 9-ek, and that meant something. It shaped your life, your fate, even your job. Meanwhile, the Hab, their solar calendar, kept things grounded. It tracked the agricultural cycle, the rainy and dry seasons, the best time to plant maize or hold festivals. Together, these 2 calendars meshed like gears in a cosmic machine, forming a 52-year cycle called the calendar round. And then, there was the long count. Think of it like the universe's scoreboard. It tracked the number of days since creation began, specifically August 11th, 3114 BCE, according to the Maya. That is right. They picked their own year 0 based on the moment the gods built the world from bones and blood. So when you hear someone say the world was supposed to end in 2012, yeah, that was just the end of a long count cycle, like turning a cosmic odometer back to 0. No fire, no doom, just reset. The Maya weren't predicting the end. They were acknowledging the next beginning, and this is where things get even stranger. Some of their ancient codices, like the Dresden Codex discovered in Europe after the Spanish conquest, contain tables predicting eclipses, Venus cycles, lunar phases, with better precision than anything in Europe at the time. These weren't just sky watchers. They were engineers of eternity. And yet, despite all this brilliance, the Maya didn't seem obsessed with linear time the way we are. For them, time was circular, layered, and alive. Every cycle was a spiral, returning again with a new face. Imagine living like that, knowing that what happened today echoes what happened centuries ago and might happen again. You wouldn't fear the future, you'd just prepare for its return. Here's your second joke. They didn't need reminders on their phones. They had the stars on speed dial. But this raises one of the great debates. Why did they care so much? Why track the heavens with such obsession? Some scholars say it was agricultural. If you want to survive in the jungle, you'd better know when the rains are coming. Others argue it was religious control, a way for priests to assert power by aligning rituals with divine timing. Still others believe it was simply a philosophical quest, to understand where humans fit in the vast celestial dance. Historians still debate whether the calendar shaped religion or religion shaped the calendar, a classic chicken or the solar eclipse scenario. And yet, this was no dusty academic exercise. Entire city plans were built around astronomical events. Temples aligned with solstices. Doorways framed the rising of Venus. The pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza casts a shadow of a serpent slithering down the stairs on the equinox. You can't make this up. It's as if the gods were architects and the Maya were building in sync with their blueprint. A strange detail for you. Some Maya priests would stay awake for days leading up to key celestial events, fasting and meditating under the stars to listen for divine timing. Imagine being that tuned in, while the rest of us miss appointments because we forgot to charge our phones. Third joke of the section? At least your calendar app doesn't require blood sacrifices yet. And all of this, the layers, the cycles, the cosmic countdowns, feeds back into something deeper, a belief that every moment matters. That time is not just a measure of days, but a living force woven through everything: corn, kings, seasons, and souls. The ticking of the Maya world wasn't mechanical. It was musical, rhythmic, a heartbeat. So tonight, as your own clock ticks gently beside you, remember that the Maya believed time was watching back, that the stars didn't just shine, they remembered. The jungle air is thick again, the kind of warm that clings to your skin and sinks into your bones. Night is close but not quite here. Somewhere in a clearing, a circle of Maya priests sits in silence, eyes wide, skin glistening, breath held. And then, without ceremony, one of them lifts a long gourd tube. Nope. It's not a flute. Because tonight, they're not looking up at the stars or sharpening jade. Tonight, they're preparing for what might be the most bizarre spiritual gateway of all. The ritual enema. Yep, you heard that right. The Maya didn't just talk to the gods, they purged their insides to meet them. Here's the first joke of the night. Some people meditate, some do yoga. The Maya took a shortcut, through the back door. Let's break it down, gently. The Maya believed that true communion with the gods required altered states of consciousness. Sometimes that came from bloodletting or fasting, but other times they went with a more extreme method, administering enemas using sacred herbs, fermented alcohol, or hallucinogenic substances. That's right, they ingested visions rectally. Why? Because it worked fast, much faster than drinking, skip the liver, go straight to enlightenment. Now this isn't just some fringe theory. We've got the murals to prove it, especially in Bonampak, a Maya city known for its vivid temple paintings. One image clearly shows a man receiving an enema from a long-handled syringe, while others around him are in various stages of trance, chanting, or offering up more substances. Historians still debate whether these enemas were reserved for elite rituals or if they were more common across classes. Some scholars say they were part of royal ceremonies, perhaps before speaking to ancestors or gods, while others suggest they were used to induce visions during astronomical events or war preparations. Either way, they weren't done casually. These were sacred acts. And the ingredients? Oh, the ingredients. Some mixtures included balche, a fermented honey drink made from tree bark. Others had strong alcohols or crushed morning glory seeds, which contain chemicals similar to LSD. Add some jungle herbs, mix well, and brace yourself. You can almost hear the shaman. You're going to feel a little pressure. Now, before you start giggling too hard, consider the intent behind it. These weren't college party tricks. They were carefully planned spiritual journeys. Maya priests believed these rituals allowed them to see into other realms, talk to gods, ancestors, or even nature spirits. The line between our world and the next, it blurred, burned, and opened wide. Still, modern scholars scratch their heads. Were these visions literal messages from deities, or the hallucinations of a chemically drenched brain. No one can say for sure, but the Maya treated them as real, deadly real. Second joke of the section. The Maya took the phrase gut feeling to a whole new level. One particularly strange detail. These rituals were often paired with music, incense, and intense fasting. Imagine not eating for 3 days, then receiving a psychedelic enema while sitting in a temple lit by flickering torches and filled with the scent of burning copal. Your senses wouldn't just open, they'd explode. And let's be honest, as shocking as it sounds, it's not that different from what many cultures do today in search of transcendence. Ayahuasca ceremonies, sweat lodges, isolation tanks. The Maya just skipped the spa music and dove straight into the void. And don't forget, they saw the body as a gateway, not something dirty or shameful, but sacred. What entered or exited could be part of a divine transaction, just like blood from the tongue or breath from a chant. These were offerings, cleansings, communications. It's not about shock, it's about access. Still, archaeologists are careful when interpreting these images and writings. Could some of the depictions be symbolic? Possibly. Maybe the enema was a metaphor for spiritual cleansing, or maybe it was both literal and symbolic. That's the thing with Maya rituals. There's always more beneath the surface, literally. You're probably wondering how this all looked in practice. Well, picture this. A priest stands in silence, surrounded by incense smoke and night sounds. He wears feathers, jade earrings, and carries a gourd filled with sacred liquid. He lies on his side, breathes deeply, and with the help of another shaman, yes, teamwork, they begin the ritual. Within minutes, he begins to shake, whisper, then speak, not as himself, but as someone else. Maybe a god, maybe a jaguar spirit, maybe a dead ancestor long forgotten. And those who witness him, they listen, they write, they believe. It's easy to laugh, but it's harder to ignore the power behind it. Third joke. When the Maya said they were full of wisdom, they meant it, all the way up. So tonight, as the jungle cools and the stars peek out one by one, remember, not every path to enlightenment is soft or slow or quiet. Sometimes it's strange, sometimes it's messy, sometimes it goes places you'd never expect. But the Maya weren't afraid of the body or the spirit or the space in between. The stars are out now, bright pinpricks scattered across a velvet sky, and the jungle breathes a little easier under their light. The air is calmer, the frogs louder, and somewhere deep inside a Maya village, a baby has just been born. But no one rushes to name her Maria or Juan or anything you'd expect. No, her name is Forcan, or maybe Tenchikchan, or something like Ninebian, depending on the sacred day she arrived. Because in the Maya world, you didn't just get a name. You earned a cosmic fingerprint. And it wasn't your parents who chose it, it was the calendar. From the moment a child was born, the Tzolk'in, their 260-day sacred calendar, assigned that birth date a name made of a number, 1 to 13, and a day sign, 1 of 20, like wind, snake, rain, jaguar, or monkey. These weren't just pretty words. Each carried deep meaning tied to gods, animals, natural forces, and even fate. So if you were born on 9th Ajor, for example, you might be destined to become a leader, or priest, or scribe, someone of power. But 13. Kimi. That might mark you as someone close to death, the underworld, or ancestral knowledge. Not exactly the kind of vibe you print on a baby blanket, but hey, it's destiny. Joke number 1. Forget baby name books. The Maya let the stars do the paperwork. Now this wasn't some quirky superstition. It shaped your entire life. Your name was a prophecy, a hint at who you were meant to become. Some day signs were associated with strength, artistry, magic, or fertility, and others with mischief, chaos, or even bad luck. So yes, some poor Maya toddlers grew up being told, "You were born under the crocodile, try not to eat anyone today." This system also helped determine when certain rites should happen, naming ceremonies, first haircut, tattoo initiation, even when you could get married. Imagine being told, "Sorry, your wedding has to wait until 5ik rolls around next year." It's like the universe was your very strict wedding planner. There's historical proof of this system in carved glyphs and codices, especially the Madrid Codex, which contains birth charts, fate predictions, and day sign meanings. Entire sections are devoted to describing what each Tzolk'in day signifies and how it might affect someone's behavior, luck, and purpose. Still, historians debate just how strictly these day names governed Maya lives. Were they ironclad rules or flexible guidelines? Was a child with an unlucky name truly doomed, or could they rewrite their fate through ritual and sacrifice? It is a question that echoes across every culture. How much control do we really have over who we become? Now here's a bizarre detail that takes it further. Some parents waited several days before giving their child their full name, watching for signs, consulting priests, and performing quiet rituals to ensure the birth sign was interpreted correctly. No pressure, baby. Even more fascinating, these names could sometimes change. Not the day name, but your adult title, depending on your accomplishments, job, or religious role. So, someone born as 11 men might later be called Lord Shield Jaguar or Speaker of the Earth, especially if they grew into their prophetic role. Second joke. So yes, you could start life as 7 Lizard and still end up as a big deal. There's hope for us all. This naming system wasn't isolated. It tied directly into the broader belief that time itself was alive, that every day had a personality and purpose. The Maya didn't just track time. They talked about it like it was a person. Some days were friendly, some were dangerous, some were impatient. And if you were born on one of the moody days, well, good luck. And it didn't stop at people. Buildings, rituals, even wars were scheduled based on these sacred dates. You couldn't just declare a battle because you were in the mood. You had to wait for the right cosmic alignment. Attack on 3 Khan? Maybe. But 12 Khan? Disaster. Here's a lovely oddity. Some nobles would add their day name to their official title, like a badge of honor. You weren't just a king, you were Lord Six Flint, ruler of time and steel. Sounds like a superhero, or a very dramatic wrestler. So why did this all matter so much? Because the Maya believed that time wasn't neutral. It was personal. Each moment was stitched with the threads of divine intent. Ignoring your birth sign was like ignoring the advice of the gods, and nobody wanted to start life off that badly. Still, historians are divided. Did everyone truly believe in the calendar's power, or was it mostly used by priests and elites? Was it faith, or just tradition, repeated until no one questioned it? Third joke. Your horoscope might warn you about traffic. The Mayas might predict your death by snake god. So tonight, if you're lying there wondering about your own fate, what your name means, what you were supposed to do, imagine being born into a world where the calendar itself whispered your purpose into your parents' ears. The stars watched you, the gods labeled you, and every step forward felt like walking on a path written long before your first breath. The night is still, but warm. The kind of warm where your skin hums with the air itself, moist, thick, and filled with the scent of earth. Now imagine standing in the middle of that jungle under a scorching sun, with no shade in sight and humidity that sticks to your lungs like honey. You're sweating buckets, you're not alone. And your only protection? Crocodile poop. Yeah, not what you expected. Because while we're out here slathering on SPF 50 and reapplying between Instagram photos, the ancient Maya had their own version of sunscreen, and it was way more hardcore. They made it from ground-up plants, minerals, clay, and yes, crocodile dung. Let that settle in for a second. Here's your first joke of the night. When the Maya said natural skincare, they really meant it. So why crocodile poop? Well, to be fair, they didn't just rub it on fresh from the source. They mixed it with other ingredients, like crushed tree bark, limestone, and pigment-rich clays. The idea was that the mixture not only protected their skin from the sun, but also repelled insects and symbolized strength, because the crocodile wasn't just a swamp lizard to them. It was a sacred creature, a god-beast, a symbol of the earth itself. In Maya mythology, the world was often visualized as resting on the back of a cosmic crocodile, floating through the stars. So to wear something associated with this creature, that was protection in more ways than one. Historians believe this sunscreen wasn't just practical, it was also ceremonial. Warriors might wear it before battle, farmers could use it in the fields, priests might apply it before long rituals in the hot sun. It had function, yes, but also power, and it probably smelled wild. But don't laugh too hard. Scientists have found evidence that some of these traditional ingredients actually worked. The clay particles reflect UV rays. The organic matter forms a barrier on the skin, and some compounds in the crocodile dung may have even had antimicrobial properties. Still, historians debate just how widespread this practice was. Was it something everyone used, or just a high-status ritual blend passed from priest to priest like a holy lotion recipe? Maybe the poor just used mud, while the elites used the full deluxe croco pack. We still don't know for sure. One thing we do know, the Maya took their appearance seriously, and not just for vanity. It was about identity, health, spiritual connection. And, well, not getting sunburned, there is even evidence that they painted their skin using red or black pigments during certain festivals and daily life. Red represented life and power, often applied by men. Black was associated with death, the underworld, and mystery, often worn by priests. Imagine stepping out of your house, painted head to toe, in obsidian black with a nice poop base layer underneath. Fashion meets function. Second joke. Today's influencers wear highlighter. The Maya wore death paint and crocodile extract, same vibe. And it wasn't just for sun protection either. These skin treatments and paints had a symbolic role. They were masks, transformations, a way of becoming what they represented. You weren't just painting your face, you were calling on the power of fire, jaguars, or even the gods themselves. Imagine a young warrior crouched by a riverbank, mixing pigment and paste in a carved gourd bowl. He smears the mixture across his face, over his chest, down his arms. He doesn't feel like himself anymore. He feels like the thunder god, ready, unstoppable. But again, modern scholars still argue over some of these interpretations. Was this mostly about protection from the sun and insects, or was it primarily religious? Were they more concerned with the climate or the cosmos? There's no clean answer. In Maya life, there rarely was. Everything had multiple meanings. A practical action could also be a prayer. A smear of clay could be both sunscreen and sacred symbol. And here's a fun, weird detail for you. Certain plants used in these mixtures only grew near cenotes, those sacred sinkholes the Maya believed were portals to the underworld. So to make the full sunscreen mix, you had to journey close to death, just to stay safe from the sun. Third joke. That's dedication. I complain if I have to go past the fridge to find my moisturizer. So, next time you slather on aloe or dab your face with some all-natural serum, remember, the Maya did it first, and they didn't need a luxury label, just mud, bark, sunlight, and a crocodile's blessing, and they wore it proudly. The jungle has gone quiet again, just the occasional whisper of wind through leaves and the soft thrum of insects dancing in the dark. But step into a Maya village at night, and it's anything but silent. Not because of noise, because of presence. Because the Maya believed something most of us have forgotten. Houses are not just wood and stone. They're alive, and they're watching you. That's right. In the ancient Maya world, homes had spirits, personalities, even moods. The Maya word for house, na, was more than a structure. It was a sacred space, a member of the family, a protector and a witness. And if you didn't treat your house right, it could get angry or worse, let something else in. Here is your first joke of the night. Forget home security systems. The Maya had spiritual insurance. These weren't just beliefs whispered to kids at bedtime. They were deeply ingrained in the way Maya people built, decorated, and lived inside their homes. The very first thing done before building a house, a ritual, often involving offerings, bits of food, maize, jade beads, sometimes blood, buried at the corners or under the hearthstone. This wasn't superstition. It was a kind of sacred contract. We'll build here, and in return we'll respect you. Sometimes a tiny figurine called a wyob, a household spirit, was placed under the floor or inside the walls, kind of like a supernatural roommate, except you never saw it, and it might eat your soul if you broke the house rules. No pressure. And what were those rules? Don't argue too loud after dark. Don't step over the hearth if food is cooking. Never leave the fire completely cold. The hearth was the heart of the house, and letting it die out could insult its spirit. Even the position of the door mattered. Many Maya houses were oriented with the front facing east, toward the rising sun, the beginning of the day, and rebirth. The back of the house. That was where spirits lingered, and maybe where your grandmother kept the really weird stuff. Historians still debate whether every home had its own individual spirit, or if certain families shared ancestral guardians passed down through generations. Some researchers think a house's soul might be tied to the land beneath it, especially if burials were placed under the floor. Yes, that was a thing. Imagine eating your tamales while your great-great-grandfather rests quietly 2 feet beneath your stool. Second joke. You think your house has character? The Mayas had characters in it, but it goes deeper. The Maya didn't think of people and buildings as separate. A house could be sick or sad just like a person. If bad things kept happening, illness, crop failure, arguments, they didn't just blame bad luck. They performed rituals to heal the house. That might involve chanting, incense, or offerings, or even moving the hearthstones, the 3 sacred stones every Maya home was built around. These stones symbolize the 3 stones of creation from their origin myth, meaning every home was a miniature version of the universe. One strange detail? Some homes had small holes dug into the floor near the center. Archaeologists call them cache pits, little sacred pockets where objects were placed to feed the spirit of the house, kind of like snacks for the soul. You didn't just live in a house, you lived with it. It watched you, protected you, judged you, and when you died, it remembered. And sometimes, just sometimes, the house itself outlived the family and became a shrine, a sacred ruin, left standing as a quiet reminder of what had been. Locals might still leave offerings at the hearth long after the last resident was gone. Historians are still puzzling over just how widespread these beliefs were. Did every Maya person follow them? Or was it mostly rural communities? Some think it varied by region, others think it was universal but practiced in different forms. But what's certain is this: the Maya didn't draw a line between stone and spirit. Walls weren't just barriers, they were beings. And it wasn't just houses. Temples, ball courts, even roads could have spiritual identities. The Maya word for sakbe, their sacred white roads, literally translates to white road of the spirit. Walking on them wasn't just transportation, it was a ritual, a conversation with the past. Final joke for the night: when your walls are listening and your floor has feelings, maybe you don't throw your socks everywhere. So tonight, as you lie in your own house, modern, creaky, maybe too cold or too hot, ask yourself, what if your walls remember? What if your floor has secrets? What if the home itself is listening, waiting, watching over you as gently as the stars above? The stars are at their brightest now, casting silver shadows over stone ruins and mossy steps. Somewhere in the darkness, you can almost feel it, that cold pull from the past, rising out of carved limestone and jungle vines. You're standing before a Maya temple, but this isn't just a building. It's not a palace, not even a church. It's a machine for turning humans into gods, because the Maya didn't build temples to worship their kings. They built them so their kings could become divine. Here's your first joke. Most of us retire with a pension. Maya kings retired as deities. It starts when a king is still alive. Every Maya ruler was expected to trace their lineage back to the gods, not metaphorically, literally. Many inscriptions describe royal bloodlines as descending from the hero twins, sun gods, or creator deities. It's like if your family tree had a branch that said, "Oh yeah, my great-uncle was the moon." So when a king ascended the throne, it wasn't just a promotion, it was a cosmic event. Ceremonies were held in sacred plazas. The king wore jaguar skins, jade masks, elaborate headdresses that made his body 3 times taller than it was. He was no longer just a man. He was a walking symbol of time, life, and sacred power. But that transformation didn't stop at the coronation. No, it grew with age, and eventually, with death. You see, Maya temples, especially those pyramids you see in places like Tikal or Palenque, weren't just monuments. They were funerary engines. Inside, beneath layers of stone and stairs, lay the tombs of kings, wrapped in jade and obsidian, surrounded by offerings, inscriptions, and ritual objects. And above them, a staircase leading straight to the sky. Because the Maya believed that when a great ruler died, his spirit didn't leave. It climbed that temple step by step into the heavens. There, it became a celestial force, a star, a god, a protector of his people. One famous case is Pakal the Great, king of Palanque, who ruled for nearly 70 years. When his tomb was uncovered in the 1950s, archaeologists found him lying beneath a massive carved stone slab, showing him descending into the underworld on a world tree, surrounded by symbols of rebirth. It wasn't just a grave, it was a gateway. Still, historians debate, was this really a literal belief or more of a political strategy? Was divinity just a way to justify power? Or did the Maya genuinely believe their kings became gods? The inscriptions suggest it wasn't just propaganda. These beliefs were deeply embedded in Maya cosmology, myths, and rituals. Now here is a strange detail. Many of these kings were buried with mouth beads or jade plaques placed between their teeth, symbols of breath and speech, meant to help them speak again in the afterlife. Imagine dying and your family's first thought is, quick, give him a jade Bluetooth headset so he can talk to the gods. Second joke, in Maya temples the customer is always divine. And the temple itself? It wasn't just a tombstone, it was a living monument, designed to align with astronomical events. Many were built so that on specific days, like the equinox or solstice, the sun would rise or set perfectly over the central staircase, casting shadows or bathing the king's name in golden light. Every year, over and over, the temple helped people remember, he's still up there, watching. Some temples were painted in bright reds, yellows, even blues, now faded with time but once dazzling in the sun. They weren't just grey ruins, they were glowing with meaning. Every glyph carved into their walls told a story. A war won, a god summoned, a bloodline protected. And it wasn't just for kings. Queens, priests, and nobles also had smaller temples or shrines, sometimes even inside their homes, where daily rituals continued long after death. The Maya didn't see the spirit world as distant. It was just a breath away. There's another layer to this, literally. Many Maya pyramids weren't built all at once. They were rebuilt over and over, with each generation adding new layers on top of the old. It's like stacking memory on memory. A king might be buried deep within a pyramid that now towers with the work of his descendants. Each layer a tribute, a prayer, a piece of his ongoing divine presence. Third joke. Most family heirlooms are jewelry. The Maya just inherited entire pyramids. But here's the eerie part. Some rituals didn't just honor the dead. They tried to communicate with them. Priests might burn copal resin, chant sacred names, or even sleep inside temple chambers to dream with the ancestors. They believed these structures acted like antennas, drawing in the voices of the past. Historians still wonder, did people truly experience these dreams? Or was it performance, part of royal theater? Whatever it was, it worked. People believed. They still do. Modern Maya communities in Guatemala and Mexico often visit old temples with candles and prayers, treating them not as ruins but relatives. So tonight, as you picture those stone steps rising into moonlight, remember, to the Maya every temple held a heartbeat, every carving was a whisper, and every king who walked those halls, he never really left. The air shifts again, heavier now, like the jungle is holding its breath. You're standing at the edge of a Maya battlefield. No guns, no cannons, just obsidian blades, shields of jaguar hide, and warriors dressed like walking nightmares, painted in red, wearing skulls draped in feathers and clinking with bones. These weren't just fighters. They were avatars of the gods. And every battle. It was a sacred performance, because in the Maya world, war wasn't just about territory. It was about cosmic order, balance, blood, and sometimes humiliation. Here is your first joke. The Maya didn't go to war for oil, they went for souls. Unlike the giant empires of Rome or China, the Maya weren't obsessed with conquering huge swaths of land. What they wanted most from war was people, particularly rival nobles, elites, or even kings. Capturing a high-status enemy was like winning the cosmic lottery. Because once you had a captive, you could sacrifice them, not out of cruelty, but as an offering to the gods, a cosmic transaction. Here's this royal soul, please give us rain. And how did the warriors prepare for this kind of battle? Well, forget armor. Maya warriors often went into combat nearly naked, except for loincloths and body paint. But don't think that made them vulnerable. They were fast, agile, and terrifying. Their skin was streaked with black or red dye, colors of death and power, and their faces were often masked with animal features, jaguar jaws, crocodile snouts, or bird beaks. Because the Maya believed that wearing these symbols wasn't just dress-up, it invoked the animal spirit. If you painted yourself like a jaguar, you became a jaguar. You moved like one, fought like one, killed like one. Second joke. So next time you feel brave in your gym outfit, remember, the Maya went to war in body paint and a bird mask. Weapons were simple, but brutal. The macuahuitl, a wooden club edged with razor-sharp obsidian blades, could slice through bone with one swing. There were also atlatls, spear throwers, slings, bows, and flint daggers. But the most dangerous weapon, fear? Maya warriors announced themselves with drums, conch shells, and howls that echoed through the jungle. They wanted to be heard before they were seen, like thunder before the lightning. And then there was the gear. Maya warriors decorated themselves with trophies, bones from past enemies, animal teeth, and even human skull fragments, sometimes worn as pendants or sewn into belts. This wasn't morbid fashion. It was a way of carrying power, proof of victories, a visible sign that you were favored by the gods. Some even painted eyes onto their chests, believing it gave them a second sight in battle, or maybe it just freaked out their enemies. Win-win. But not every battle was death and chaos. Some were highly ritualized, with very specific targets. The goal wasn't to destroy a city, it was to capture key people and bring them home for sacrifice. One famous event was the capture of the king of Dos Pilas by a rival city-state. He wasn't killed immediately. Instead, he was paraded, humiliated, and finally sacrificed in a ceremony witnessed by hundreds. That's not just war, that's a message. We own your god. We own your fate. Historians still debate how widespread these practices were. Was every battle spiritual, or was some just raw revenge? Some believe the line between sacred war and political aggression blurred constantly. One day you're performing cosmic balance, the next you're burning a neighbor's maize field because they mocked your rain god. A strange detail. Some warrior societies had ranks based on captives, not kills. That's right. It wasn't about how many people you stabbed. It was about how many you caught alive. The more prisoners you brought home, the more feathers you earned. Think of it as a deadly loyalty program. And those feathers? Oh, they weren't just decoration. Quetzal feathers, in particular, were prized beyond gold. A single plume could be a status symbol. A full headdress? You were basically walking divinity. Third joke, feathers, skulls, and obsidian swords. Ancient Maya war was like a high-fashion horror show. And yet, for all the violence, there was restraint. Battles often took place on specific calendar days, chosen for their spiritual significance. They began with rituals. They ended with offerings. And many cities had rules of engagement, agreed upon by rival kings. War had etiquette. But sometimes it didn't. There are stories of cities being razed, temples defiled, captives tortured in public. In those moments, the jungle swallowed mercy whole. And when the war was over, the rituals began. Captives were painted blue, the color of sacrifice, and marched up temple stairs. Their names were recorded, their deaths commemorated, not erased. Because even enemies had a role in the cosmic script. So tonight, as the jungle shifts and your own room feels quiet and safe, remember this. The Maya fought not to conquer land, but to feed the universe. To remind the gods they hadn't been forgotten, to prove they were brave enough to dance with death and come back covered in feathers. The jungle hums with that low, steady buzz, like something ancient is stirring just beneath the leaves. And tonight, the sound you're hearing isn't thunder. It's the deep, hollow bounce of a rubber ball, echoing off stone walls. Welcome to the Maya ball game. A ritual, a spectacle, and sometimes a sentence. But don't picture a friendly match at summer camp. This was no pickup game. This was a sacred drama, played on massive stone courts, often in the heart of the city, with rules so mysterious, even historians today aren't quite sure how it worked. Here's your first joke. Imagine a sport so serious, losing might cost you your head, and not metaphorically. Known as pock-to-pock or pits, the game was played using a solid rubber ball, often weighing up to 9 pounds, about the size of a melon and the consistency of a bowling ball. Players couldn't use their hands. Instead, they hit it with their hips, thighs, elbows, or chests, anything but hands or feet. Now imagine doing that while wearing a stone yoke around your waist and trying not to break a rib every time the ball hit you. And this wasn't a sideshow. Ball courts were built in sacred areas, often between temples, and some cities had multiple courts, each decorated with glyphs, serpents, and images of gods. The court itself symbolized the underworld, and the ball's motion mimicked the movement of celestial bodies, Sun, Moon, Venus. In Maya myth, the hero twins Hunahpu and Ixbalanque descend into the underworld to face off against death gods in a ball game. So every real-life match? It was a reenactment of that myth, a cosmic showdown between light and darkness. Second joke. This was less Saturday sports-bound and more life-or-death performance art with a chance of decapitation. And yes, some games ended in sacrifice. But here's where things get tricky. Historians still debate who exactly was sacrificed. Was it the losing team, the captain of the losers, the winners, or only elite captives brought in for a ritual match? Some glyphs and carvings show victorious players holding the heads of their opponents, while others hint that the best players offered themselves willingly for sacrifice, because dying on the court could mean immortality. One famous panel at Chichen Itza shows a player being beheaded with snakes and plants bursting from his neck, symbolizing rebirth and the flow of life. That's not just gruesome, that's philosophical gore. But the game wasn't all about blood. It was also about politics, diplomacy, and spectacle. Sometimes kings played, sometimes noble children, sometimes prisoners, paraded in for a final match. It was entertainment, yes, but also spiritual choreography, a way to tell stories and settle disputes without full-blown war. One especially weird detail. Some rubber balls were made with ashes of the dead mixed into the latex, so that when the ball bounced, it was literally animated by ancestral spirit. Imagine getting hit in the chest with Great Uncle X's soul. Third joke. You haven't really played until you've been tackled by a ball containing 3 generations of your ancestors. And these matches could draw crowds. Giant stone stands flanked the court. Priests watched. Nobles bet on outcomes. Commoners cheered or trembled. And the tension in the air, you could cut it with an obsidian blade. Sometimes ball games marked the beginning of a new king's reign. Other times they accompanied funerals, astronomical events, or seasonal festivals. The timing mattered. The setting mattered. Even the sound of the ball mattered. It echoed through the sacred space like a heartbeat in stone. Still, scholars aren't entirely sure how the scoring worked. Was it about hitting markers on the wall, getting the ball through a high stone ring, as seen at Chichen Itza, or simply keeping it in play the longest? We may never know. But what we do know is this. The game wasn't about points, it was about balance, order, sacred rhythm. And that sacred rhythm continued long after the match ended. The blood, if there was sacrifice, wasn't just spilled, it was offered. The gods were watching, the stars were watching. Even the ancestors, maybe inside the ball, were watching. So tonight, while your world winds down and the air cools across your room, try to imagine standing at the edge of that court, torchlight flickering, drums pounding, the ball flying like a planet across the underworld sky. To win was glory. To lose could be eternity. The first golden light of dawn is peeking over the horizon, but in the Maya world that just means the city is waking up. You're standing in the center of a bustling plaza, surrounded by merchants calling out prices, the sweet scent of roasted cacao, the clinking of jade beads, and the soft thud of sandals on limestone. Welcome to a Maya marketplace, loud, colorful, chaotic, and deeply sacred. Because this wasn't just about shopping, it was a ritual of exchange, and in true Maya style, even the simplest trade was connected to the gods. Here is your first joke. Imagine going to a farmer's market where the tomatoes come with a side of cosmic destiny. Let's start with what they were buying and selling. You had maize and beans, of course, the staples of life. You also had avocados, tomatoes, squash, honey, chilies, and everyone's favorite currency, cacao. Yes, chocolate was money. Dried cacao beans were used to buy everything from food and firewood to cloth and slaves. In some areas, you could literally count your wealth in chocolate. One Spanish chronicler even noted that a rabbit could be bought for 10 cacao beans. And a prostitute? About 8. But let's not unpack that one right now. And then there was jade. More valuable than gold, jade was the gem of the gods. It symbolized life, breath, and status. Nobles wore it in their ears, on their teeth, and around their necks. Even the dead were buried with it in their mouths to help them speak in the afterlife. Second joke. We wear grills for the bling. The Maya did it so they could talk to the underworld with style. Yes, you heard that right. The Maya modified their teeth. Starting in childhood, elite individuals filed their teeth into points, inlaid them with jade or hematite, and sometimes even had patterns etched into them. Imagine being 13 years old, and your rite of passage is a mouthful of shiny, sharp, sacred dental work. Historians still debate the purpose of these body mods. Were they status symbols, spiritual enhancements, or both? One theory is that decorated teeth made the wearer look like jaguars, sacred animals connected to royalty and the underworld. Another says they were simply fashionable, like ancient braces with divine flair. And it wasn't just teeth. Nose piercings, ear flares, head shaping, and full-body tattoos were common among elites. But the marketplace is where these things started, where artisans, jewelers, tattooists, and stoneworkers sold their services and wares. Maya cities like Calakmul, Tikal, and Uxmal had enormous markets that could draw thousands of people. These weren't just economic zones, they were cosmic intersections. Some plazas were aligned with celestial movements so that major trading days lined up with solar or lunar events. Buying a pair of sandals on the right day might just earn you some divine favor. A strange detail, Maya merchants were often protected by their own god, Ek Chwaj, the black-faced deity of trade and travel. He was sometimes drawn with a pack on his back, a walking stick in hand, and a face smeared in soot. Third joke, the original small business owner, with divine backing and absolutely no return policy. Merchants also played a role in spreading culture. Through trade routes that reached as far as central Mexico and Honduras, they carried not just goods but stories, rituals, art, and gossip. It is how Jade from Guatemala ended up in a temple hundreds of miles away, and how obsidian from the highlands reached coastal shrines. But there was always danger. Merchants traveled long distances, often through enemy territory. That's why some went armed, others under royal protection, and many conducted rituals before setting out, asking Ekchwaj for safe passage. And it wasn't all just goods and glitter. The marketplace also served as a place of judgment. Maya leaders might hear disputes here, settle debts, or even perform rituals to purify the space. Because with that much energy, wealth, envy, desire, and trade, the gods needed reassurance that balance was being kept. Still, historians aren't sure how much the average person traded. Was cacao common or elite? Was jade everywhere or reserved for nobles? Some scholars argue that village markets were more modest, beans, rope, cloth, while cities hosted the high-end goods. Others think even rural folks got their hands on luxury from time to time. But either way, the marketplace was the heart of Maya daily life. So tonight, as you picture your next trip to the store, imagine if your receipt came with a blessing from a soot-covered god, and your cash was something you could drink in hot, frothy form. In the Maya world, everything was connected, even your afternoon shopping trip. The sun is barely a suggestion now, lost behind a curtain of green. We're deeper in the jungle, where vines hang like curtains. The ground is soft with centuries of footsteps, and the air smells like damp bark and secrets. To the Maya, this wasn't just a forest, it was a living cathedral, a breathing map of spirits, gods, and ancestral voices, because they didn't see nature as a backdrop. It was the main stage, and every leaf, every stone, every twisted root held meaning. Here's your first joke. Today we hug trees. The Maya asked them for advice. Let's start with the saber tree, the sacred world tree towering high with spiny bark and widespread branches. The Maya believed it connected the three realms. The roots stretched into Xibalba, the underworld, the trunk lived in the human world, and the canopy reached the heavens. It wasn't just a metaphor. Actual cheba trees were planted at important sites, temple plazas, burial grounds, even crossroads. People tied offerings to the bark, whispered prayers to the leaves, and sometimes performed entire rituals in its shadow. If you were born near a ceiba tree, you were considered especially blessed. If one fell near your house, that could be a very bad omen. But not all sacred trees had spines. The Maya revered a wide range of plants, from chili peppers to copal trees, which provided the sweet-smelling resin burned in temples. Cornstalks in particular weren't just food. They were divine beings. The maize god, youthful and handsome, was often shown emerging from a split husk, like a rebirth from the earth itself. So, planting maize wasn't just agriculture, it was sacred choreography. Rituals marked every stage: sowing, sprouting, harvesting. Some communities even held maize dances, where young men dressed as corn gods, their headdresses towering like tassels. Second joke: if your food came to life in your religion, you'd never look at popcorn the same way again. Even the animals of the forest were spiritual neighbors. Jaguars, of course, were powerful underworld creatures. Howler monkeys were connected to artistry and scribes, sometimes seen as reincarnated poets. Owls were messengers from the dead. And if you heard one call at night, you might want to hide. One odd detail: some Maya priests believed that trees and rocks could talk, but not in ways we understand. Through dreams, through echoes, through patterns in falling leaves or strange behavior in animals. So entering the forest wasn't just a walk, it was a dialogue with the unseen. And they had rules. You didn't cut a tree without permission. You didn't step into certain groves without cleansing yourself. And if you disrespected the spirits, you might face the wrath of the alux. These tiny elf-like beings were believed to live in the forest, guarding caves, crops, and sacred springs. Mischievous and protective, they could bless your harvest or curse your home. Farmers often left them offerings of food, alcohol, or even little houses built from stone to keep them happy. Still, historians debate how literally the Maya saw these spirits. Were they real beings, or symbolic reminders to respect nature? Some say the alux were folklore. Others believe they were part of a deeper animist belief that everything, even the air, had personality. But in modern Maya communities, people still build alux houses, still whisper to trees, still leave gifts at the edges of sacred springs. The forest isn't empty. It's occupied, and not just by spirits, because the jungle also holds memory. Beneath moss and roots lie entire cities, temples and roads, slowly being reclaimed by vines. You could be walking over a forgotten altar and never know it. Third joke: only in the Maya jungle can a casual hike turn into trespassing on an ancient goddess' front porch. So tonight, as your own walls fade into shadow and the trees outside your window stand quietly in the dark, think of this. To the Maya, the forest was a library. Not of books, but of voices. The creak of a branch, the rustle of a bird, the silence after a storm, all messages, all stories, and the wise learn to listen. The night is at its quietest now. Even the jungle has hushed. Just the distant pulse of a cicada, the occasional drip of dew from a leaf. You followed the Maya through their cities, temples, ball courts, markets, and forests. But here, in the stillness, is where they felt most at home, because to them, death wasn't an end. It was a journey, a return, a transformation. In the Maya world, life and death weren't opposites. They were part of the same divine loop. Just as maize was buried and reborn from the soil, so too were people, planted into the earth to rise again in another form. Here is your first joke. The Maya didn't fear death. They treated it like a really weird layover. They believed the soul passed through a place called Xibalba, the underworld. But don't picture fire and brimstone. This was a twilight realm, filled with rivers of blood, scorpion-filled houses, and gods with names like Flying Scab and Puss Demon. Cozy. The hero twins, mythic figures in the Maya sacred book Popol Vuh, traveled through Xibalba to defeat its lords and bring order to the world. That story shaped the entire Maya worldview. You had to die to be reborn. You had to descend before you could rise. So when someone died, their family prepared them not just for burial, but for travel. The body was often wrapped in cloth, placed in a fetal position, symbolizing the return to the womb. Jade beads or maize kernels might be placed in the mouth as spiritual currency or food for the road. Tombs were often dug beneath homes, so the dead stayed close. Their spirits were consulted, their names whispered in smoke. Ancestors weren't forgotten, they were still part of the household. Second joke, forget retirement homes. The Maya just moved grandma into the floorboards. But even in death, status mattered. Kings and elites were buried in elaborate tombs, deep beneath pyramids surrounded by murals, artifacts, and offerings. Some had painted skulls, others wore full jade masks. These weren't just graves, they were launch pads to divinity. And sometimes there were multiple burials in the same tomb, suggesting family reunions in the afterlife, or possibly sacrifices made to accompany the deceased. Historians still debate these group burials. Were they ceremonial companions, family members, or high-ranking servants? We may never know for sure. But the message is clear. The next world was busy and you didn't go alone. Here's something strange. Maya graves often included tiny models of homes, tools, or animals. Not toys, but spirit replicas, meant to serve the dead in the next life, like packing a carry-on bag for eternity. And there were death anniversaries where families made offerings at the tomb. Food, flowers, music, incense. Some even held all-night vigils, listening for dreams or signs from the departed. To the Maya, the veil between worlds was thin. You just had to be quiet enough and brave enough to notice. One soft detail: some people were buried with beloved pets, especially dogs, believed to help guide souls through the rivers of the underworld. Even today, Maya communities speak of spirit dogs who lead the dead to peace. Third joke: all dogs go to heaven, and according to the Maya, they show you the way there too. Even in modern Maya traditions, death is not feared, it's honored. In Guatemala, Dia de los Muertos is celebrated with giant kites, soaring high to carry messages to ancestors. Families visit graves not with silence, but with picnics, laughter, and stories. Because the Maya never believed the dead were gone. They were just waiting on the other side of the maize field, and sometimes they came back. Not as ghosts or terrors, but as dreams, as wind, as the unexpected flutter of a hummingbird at your window. Tonight, as your room fades into hush and your body melts into the mattress, remember, for the Maya, sleep was a practice run for death and dreams. They were journeys, into the same forest, the same stars, the same sacred silence where the ancestors now walk. And now it is time to let the last flicker of your own thoughts drift into that soft jungle dark. So before you disappear into your own dream journey, if you liked wandering through this forgotten world with me, go ahead and like, share, and comment. It really helps the channel and lets me know you're out there, still listening. Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's take a gentle walk tonight.